We're gonna talk about that. Like talking about yourself in third person. Like Jesus.
Think about me. What's going on, everybody? Troy Rawlings here, and as you can see, I have this gorgeous sister with us. Her smile, look at her eyes are popping, her smile is popping, her lip gloss is popping. Media Maven, technical wizard.
Well, I'm definitely not a technical wizard, so let's not put that out there into the universe where all sorts of things will go wrong for me to have to fix.
No, the radio voice, you may recognize the voice before you recognize the face. For years, she was executive producer of the Tom Joyner Morning Show. She's a teacher, a mentor, book author, my friend and chick that hopefully will be cooking me a lot of fresh bread soon. Give it up.
I forgot I told you that.
Get it up for the modern day. Whether y'all know it or not, she's the next. What it was, Debbie Sue? Who made all the tasty cakes and stuff? Was Debbie Sue?
You went back to tasty cakes. I have no idea.
Give it up for Nikki Woods. What's going on, Nikki?
Hey, Troy. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
Look, always, Yes, we were talking one time, and I forgot we were talking about a bunch of different stuff, some media stuff, some just personal stuff. We were just kicking it, and it sounded you left to do something, or you said I need to bake something or something like that. But it was, some people talk about baking something. Like, okay, you're baking a cake. She gets off on baking bread, and I was like, what?
I bake fresh bread every week.
And you have one or two boys.
I have two. Yes, two big boys.
Probably huge. Your mom making fresh bread. Yeah. You don't even know.
You know what to do with the bread. Huh?
You know the standard that you're setting for them, for the young lady.
That's what everybody keeps saying, and I was like, well, I will hold like a tutorial in my home for any women that need to learn how to cook. That's what my mother-in-law did for me. Like, she taught me how to do smothered pork chops and everything that her son loved. She taught me how to make.
Oh, all right, ladies. Y'all hear that?
I'm going to have to do the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to that later. I was about to say, how old are you boys?
The oldest one is soon to be 19, and he is a freshman in college. He's gone. And the youngest one is 17, and he'll be out next year. So mom will be partying. I told him, I was like, I'm changing the locks. You will not have a key. Call ahead because you don't know what I might be doing. So they just get this horrific look on their face, and I think
I always feel bad.
Really pay attention.
My mom's just recently passed away, rest in peace. But I know my mom's was shapely, so I remember a couple times looking behind. We walking, I see some guys I'm like. So I always feel bad for young men that have very attractive moms, and your boys are taller than you. I take it.
They're 6'3" each.
So they walking around with you. They were like, "Excuse me, can I talk to your sister?" Oh
no, J. Anthony Brown calls them my bodyguards. But it was interesting because we were in Jamaica. The whole family was in Jamaica, and I have two nephews. And my youngest nephew's probably 20, 21. And we were walking, and a guy challenged him because he wanted to talk to me. And my nephew was like, "That is my aunt. This is not my girl." It was so funny. But my kids are the ones that had to explain to me what a MILF was.
That's and the sad thing about it is MILF is not their generation term. So it's like you've been in the kitchen baking too long. You should. No guy has said you're a real MILF. I'm like, what you call me?
I'm just like, okay. I didn't know that was a thing, but I guess it is.
All right, I kind of Quentin Tarantino a bit, so I may go back and forth, but let's start from the beginning. Where are you originally from, Nikki?
I am originally from a St. Louis suburb called Rock Hill, Missouri. So small suburb. Yeah.
Okay. So it was
one of those it was one of those kind of picturesque growing up. I mean, like everybody that lived on our street had lived there since the beginning. So, by the time people started moving away, they had been there for 40 years, that kind of thing. All the kids were friends. We're all still friends. We had clubs in the summer and played kickball. I mean, it was really great. My dad was mayor of the city for a while, so that was interesting. And my mom she was a nurse, but then she became a stay-at-home mom when she had me. I have an older sister. So when she had me, she became a stay-at-home mom. And then when we went back to school, she went and got a job at our school. So, so we were never like without supervision.
You were always, everybody, oh, that's the Woods girl. Oh, hey.
Yeah, you know what? It was funny because my dad, once we left and went to high school, then my dad would just pop up at the high school and just walk around. Like he wouldn't even tell us like he was coming. He was like, I just want people to know I'm here. The people, the teachers know I'm involved.
It was just you two girls?
It's just us two girls.
How much older is your sister than you?
Oh, like 16 months. She's
wow.
She's like my kids. Like I was right behind her.
Oh yeah. See, that's me. My daughter is only 8 now, but whenever she's back in school and all that scenario, and yeah, I was doing it already at elementary school. It was like, I just came to bring Zoe a snack. Where is she? Oh, she's out.
We would just get random, like your dad is here. We're like, what? And funny enough, when I went to Howard for college, my dad worked for the government. He's a cartographer by trade, so he made maps. And he worked for the government, and he switched divisions, so he would have to come to DC like once a month. And the same thing. My roommate would be like, your dad's on the yard. And I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Put all the liquor bottles away, like clear everything out. So that's the kind of dad I have.
My type of dad. Because I am so popping up that, hey, girl, I know we say we was going out tonight. Did you know your father's doing security at the door?
Yep, that's so my dad. And he acts like it never happened. Like we were having this conversation about dating. And we're like, Dad, we couldn't even call boys till we went to college. What do you mean dating in high school? And he acts like it never happened. Like that was just not our reality. I'm just like, yeah. Okay.
Is your dad still around?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna have to get his number because
he forgets everything.
Espionage. No. He probably remember. I always act like I forgot, but I had a plan. You go in this. He got a closet behind the door with the little string going from one piece to another. It was like, how did he know about Earl? What is going on?
He was the funniest father I think any girl could have. Like my first real date, and I'm gonna tell his name because it's funny. It's Reddit Hudson. He's like a big time lawyer. Reddit. He's like a big time lawyer in St. Louis now, and he I was just so excited to be going out with him. It was like an official date, like he was coming to pick me up. And him and my dad got to talking, and I went to bed. Like we didn't even go out. They forgot all about me. I ended up going to bed, and they just had their conversation till who knows when. And then the next morning, my dad was like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What happened? You happened. That's what happened."
Did you ever go out on a date with him again?
We did, but it just wasn't the same because I think he was more interested in my father than he was.
Oh, that's so cool. That's big turn off, guys. Just letting you know, if you talk about her father the whole time you on a date, it's gonna kill the whole movie.
Well, yeah, if he's talking about him, yeah, it's a big turn off. Not, Reddit's a cool dude, but that's just how my dad is. Everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to talk to him. He's just a great guy.
So was that the spin? When did you realize that you wanted to go into media? Was it radio first? Was it TV? Did you go to school for media initially?
I was a 5th grade teacher, and I was like, this is not my destiny. And so I got out of it really
Wait. Go back. Outside of college?
I started out as a 5th grade teacher, and I taught in the same school district I went to for maybe a year and a half. And then I went to, so my mother's Jamaican. And so I still have a lot of family in Jamaica. And I promised my grandmother, when I told my grandmother that I didn't want to be a teacher anymore, I promised her I would go back to Jamaica. And I actually taught in Jamaica for a while because they live in, I don't know if you've ever heard of Blue Mountain Coffee, but they live right across from the Blue Mountain. So it's really rural. It's not much focus on education. And in Jamaica, they have 2 tests. So either you test and either you go like the college route or you go the vocational route. And everybody was going the vocational route. So they wanted somebody to come in and up level the programming. so that they would go the college level. So that was me. And I built the first computer lab and all that. So after I did that, because I knew that teaching was not what I wanted to do, I just thought it would be cool, quite honestly. I just always liked, I like to talk. I like to communicate. I was always good at like giving speeches, and I just thought it would be cool. So I went back to school to get an additional degree in broadcasting. And I did start out in TV. So I started out actually, and you'll love this, I started out in TV sports. So yeah.
I can see that.
So I interned and worked for a little while at the NBC affiliate in St. Louis. And then I went to ESPN. Little known Nikki facts.
I love these little known Nikki. So what year?
Oh God, don't ask me.
That's right.
Was
this the Stuart? This was the Stuart Scott days when he was still at ESPN.
Yeah. So this was 95, 96.
Yeah, you at the point where ESPN was popping like it was.
Oh yeah, I was a sideline chick. But it just was, it was really, because that's all you could call it, because you weren't really reporting on anything.
It was loud, like, who is this? The cheerleaders should be over. Oh, you're a reporter. Yeah, like I'm saying.
I'm just bouncy like that, but I am a reporter. And like the whole going into the locker room, like it was just too much. Like I was too young, I was too fresh. I was a little cute, it just was too much. Oh.
Yeah, that was around the time they didn't have rules for the locker rooms then.
No, you were a reporter, so they were supposed to respect, when reporters came in, whether it was male or female. Now it doesn't happen because most men don't care, but it was quite intimidating. I shall say that it was quite intimidating.
What sport? What was your main sport that you were reporting?
Basketball. And baseball and a little bit of volleyball. But I used to, when I went back to school, when I went back to college to get my broadcasting degree, I actually did like color and play-by-play for men and women's basketball for the local cable station. And I played basketball. So that's always been like the one I know the most about.
Right.
But I love baseball. My dad played baseball, so I love baseball. And then, volleyball, just because I think women always know volleyball. So they just threw volleyball in there for me.
And somebody definitely needs to hear this. You were already in it. You graduated college with, what was your first degree in? Education. Mm-hmm. So you graduated college, started teaching in Missouri, and then went to teach in Jamaica? And then said, went back to school, get into broadcasting, and kind of quickly get picked up by a national, because ESPN was going national.
Yeah, I went, it's been really interesting. Because everybody prepares you for this small town, move up the market kind of bingo game that most people play. And I didn't play that with TV or radio. So even when I decided that TV wasn't it for me, because I thought it was really superficial, and I really thought I had some important things to say and I wanted people to hear them. So I transitioned into radio, and I worked in Boston for a year. And even though Boston is a top 10 market, I was the station that I was at was a sun up to sundown station. So literally when the sun went up, we went on. When the sun went down, we went off. And it was AM. So it was a top 10 market, but it was still, it was still dicey.
Right.
But then I was supposed to be going to Jacksonville, Florida for a job. And I stopped in Chicago. And, because I had gone back to school in Illinois. I went to Joliet, school in Joliet, Illinois, and my sister was there. And so I was like, well, I'm going to stop, chill out for a minute in Chicago. And I had been trying to get to GCI for a long time, because when I was in school, like they were just the station. And so I had been, we didn't even email at that time. I've been like mailing them like my demo, and, and I'd always get that form letter, we're not hiring. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna go up there. Like, I'm here, I'm just hanging out. I've been mailing them for a year. They should know who I am, right? So I just pop up there, and they didn't know who I was. They had no idea, and they were like, well, let's hear what you sound like, because that's really all that's important, what you sound like. Right. So I actually had an air check. We popped it in, we listened, and I got hired at the #1 station in the country to do mornings, the #1 slot. So so I've had a pretty good career as far as that's concerned.
So how long were you in radio before you started working with Tom Joyner? Or was Tom Joyner one of the shows that was syndicated on that station and that's how you connected?
That's how we connected. So I did mornings at GCI for 10 years. And Tom was on the sister station, which was like the urban, the adult format.
Adult format, right.
Yeah. So, we would run into each other but it was really his son that I think really started paying attention. And so interestingly enough, so they would ask, where are you? What do you want to do? What's your goal, aspiration? But I wasn't a producer. I was on air. So, they were like, would you be interested in producing? All those questions.
Let me interject there. When you're a personality, you don't realize that you're really a producer.
No, you don't until you actually have to produce. And that's one of the reasons that they hired me, because they we really don't want a producer. We want somebody who understands the on-air part of it and can take producing to another level.
Right.
But so I was there 10 years. And then one week, they put in the paper that we had been fired. And we saw this on our, once we got to work, that we had been fired. And everybody's like, no, you didn't get fired. So Tom called me and he was like, I saw you got fired. I'm like, no, we're not fired. It's not true. It's not true. And then the next week we were really fired. And so Tom was like, okay, in entertainment, usually you'll have a non-compete. So I had to sit out for, I think it was 9 months. You can't go work for a competitor station. I mean, you still get paid. So it's like a 9-month vacation, but you're not doing what you love.
Right.
And literally 8 months and 28 days, the phone rings you ready? You ready to get back to work? And I was like, I'm ready to get back to work. And I was on my way to Dallas.
So you've been in Dallas ever since. What year was that?
Probably 2008, 2009, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Been in Dallas. Does it seem like you've been to Dallas almost 12?
No, it's when people say it, I'm really surprised, but I've been, but to be able to say I was in, the top 3 market, Chicago's the number 3rd for 10 years on air, the number 1 urban station in the country. And then to go to Dallas and be with Tom I was at him with 9 years. Even though I've been in Dallas longer, I resigned a couple of years ago. I was with him for 9 years at the number 1 urban syndicated national show. So
I gotta I believe in giving people their flowers while they're alive. He just hitting on me. He just giving me all kinds. No, this is one that I'm sure you remember, but you may not realize that the footage was out there. I was doing a study on something else. One of my yeah.
I hate you. It's when you've been in the business this long, there's all sorts of stuff out there for
yes. Mm-hmm. I got this picture of you. No, it's just I got this picture from 1980.
Now people will send me grown adults now will send me pictures of us when they were 6. They're 40 now or so. It's crazy. I'm like, please don't post that on Facebook.
Well, I had it up for a while. I didn't know if you mind. You interviewed my favorite male vocalist of all time, Luther Vandross, and I never even had a chance to see a live Luther show before he passed away. So, what was your favorite interview of all time? The favorite person that you've interviewed? You may have interviewed more than once, or one time that's most stands out most in your head.
I don't know. I've never had a bad interview. There's never been somebody where I'm like, oh my God, they're horrible. I don't ever want, I've never had that experience. I think some people are more difficult to interview just because they're not as open or as whatever, but I've never had a bad one. Some of the surprising ones that I've had are the surprising experiences I've had, with Jay-Z. Jay-Z just rolled into the station one morning. It was 5:30, no entourage. It's he just was homeless and walked in off the street. And he was just the most down to earth, so that was really cool because I really love Jay-Z, and I think I had him at a place where he was Prince-like to me, and just for him to be so down to earth, I think was cool. But I've just talked to so many people, and I've known them for so long. If you look at a genuine.
Right.
I knew him before anybody else knew him. When Pony came out, I played that at the college station before it went, so I've known him for so long. So I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. So many, but
I don't
Luther was definitely a magical experience. Because just to see the people react to him and just like fall all over him.
And the one I saw was also different because you were because I don't know if Nat Adderley Jr. was with him, but there was a piano.
Was on the piano. Mm-hmm. He was there.
That
was the Elroy Smith, who is the program director of WGCI. He started this thing called the WGCI Music Seminar. And so he would bring in artists, and people would pay who wanted to be artists or wanted to be where they are to come learn. And so that interview was in front of, so we brought Luther in one year, and that interview was in front of the crowd.
Yeah, because you get a whole another aspect of Luther when he's in that mode versus him just being in the studio and saying, "Can you sing this?" Because he was more like, and he was thin teaching Luther. He was like talking about the aspect of music that you don't get a lot of. Sometimes people don't realize how profound musician he was.
And with Nat there, it was really cool because they would bounce and tell stories and bounce things off of each other. So that was a great experience.
And you can find that on YouTube. You'll find this on.
I was 9 months pregnant, and they thought I might deliver. And so Elroy was like, I don't know if we should let you do the. I was like, there's no way.
Anybody else is going to interview Luther.
This baby may be born today, but it's going to be born with Luther right there. So there was no way I was not doing that interview.
Might change my baby's name. Yeah. Like Luther, baby. Well, it's a long story.
Yeah, that's funny.
So you go to Tom Joyner Show. Was it as fun as it seemed? And what were some of the most challenging, kind of difficult things that you've learned?
Did you see the people I had to tell what to do? J. Anthony Brown, Tom Joyner, Roland Martin, Al Sharpton.
And let me tell you something. What's so funny? When I started in 2000, when I started in radio, I started with same kind of scenario, but I started at Heaven 600 in Baltimore. So it was the #1 gospel station in the nation. And same kind of opportunity. Hey, I'm gonna come back to you in 12 months. I need something for the youth. Just another 12 months to the day. Program directors in radio are pretty much 12 months to the day. He was like, "You ready?" I was like, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. I just took Tom Joyner's format. And seriously, I was because you had the Fly Jock, the Tom Joyner Top 20 during the weekend, but his format of having that 3 people, the different personalities, I saw a lot of that going on in radio. So by the time you got there in 2008, Tom is already Tom, and now it's not 3. What was it, 4 or 5?
Oh, by the time he finished, it was like they had a different person every day. I mean, it was crazy.
Right, because it was 2008. It was like, so it was J. Anthony Brown, Tom.
It was just Jay and Sybil, and then we had like Jackie Reed, Roland, those kind of people. But they had like Myra J. They had all of those had just left. Yeah.
Oh, left. Okay.
Yeah, they had just left when they brought me on. But yeah, so it was challenging in the fact that it was demanding. I mean, obviously Tom has the hardest working man in radio for a reason, and he expects you to work just as hard. So it was demanding from that standpoint, but I learned so much from Tom, and just how he ran the company and how he operated, really in his passion, but it was also business. But every day was a party. Like every day was, I could not have asked for a better 4 hours to start my day than there. Like I hated to take vacations just because I didn't want to miss out like on whatever could possibly come out of Jay's mouth, or learning from Sybil, or just whatever. I mean, it was just, you just never knew. Like it's like one day Tom looked at me and he's like, "I need you to call Andrew Campbell." I was like, "Who?" you mean the really? And I'm calling his house at like 5:30 in the morning. Experiences like that, or even like if I think about like President and Michelle Obama, like I knew them before he ran for state senator in Illinois. And so him coming up to GCI and us doing interviews and and then transitioning to Tom right as he runs for president, and then being at, having him come, going to campaign headquarters, being at the, it was just, and then finally getting to take my parents and my sons to the White House to meet them. Like, you know, my kids have done the, you know, the Easter roll on the White House lawn, you know. So, I mean, there were so many experiences that we had that we would have never had if I had not been in that position, that it made all of the hard work worth it and all of the sacrifice. Because I sacrificed a lot. Like, so don't get me wrong. Like, it was a grind. But it was all worth it because my kids, you know, I mean, my kids were on the stage when the Jacksons performed. You know, it's like they were just, you see them, they were like sitting right off. I was like, how did y'all get in the picture? So just, yeah, that is just so many amazing experiences we were able to have because of that, because of Tom.
So let's fast forward a bit. And how long were you with Tom Joyner?
9 years.
9 years. Mm-hmm. So, oh, wow. Almost up to when he stopped, or you had already got the word. You had got the word because
I knew it was going like downhill. I said I knew it was going downhill. Oh yeah, yeah. It had become, you know, it's interesting because and this takes nothing away from Tom. I mean, Tom is a master at what he does. But Tom was so much of a master that it was hard for him to transition to what the new radio format is, which is a lot less talking, a lot less personality, more music, and more of what all of the affiliates. And so if you look at it, I mean, Tom had 122 cities he had to keep happy. You know, that's 122 different opinions, 122 different ideas, you know, all of this stuff. So it was really hard up at, you know, getting towards the end, trying to navigate what Tom wanted, what the company wanted, and then what the affiliates wanted. So I knew that at some point, something was going to happen, and they would have something would have to give.
A big deal. I remember when I first started with Heaven 600. I remember we were working there. We said, we'll see how I go for the first 6 months. Mm-hmm. And 9 months come in, and my cousin is working at Radio One, mm-hmm. and we started doing events, and I wanted to do more events and stuff. And our show became the #1 show on the station. And you know this about Arbitron. We had a 7 rating as an AM station.
Mm. That's like unheard of. Yeah.
From 4 to 7. So I didn't know what this was. I just heard it mentioned, and I remember being at an event and some sales guys.
That's said, money. You should have been asking for a raise.
We weren't getting paid anything. Anything. So it wasn't until a salesperson that I knew was at one of my events and came to me and said, "Man, Troy, thank you, brother. You just made me $10,000." I said,
"Hello."
Wait, what? You know, we were on 9 to 11 on Friday nights. Then all of a sudden it went from 3 commercials at spot. Some people don't know what I'm talking about. 3 commercials a spot to 6. And
because people want to be heard by all them people you have listening to you now.
And we started organizing, talking to some of the people there. But remember, we like came off the street. So and just people putting in air checks who are, you know, background people. It was a great experience, but it also taught me a lot about it. One of the things I recognized and it came out later on about Tom, I ran into somebody here and we had a big conversation, radio and things, and they were talking about how Tom Joyner, why they called him the fly jockey. He had known Tom Joyner, and flying back and forth from the coast, and but the amount of money that they were starting to be able to spend on syndication with people's shows who were a lot, who were just thanks for the show type thing. And they were no offense to the comedians who have their own radio shows, but Tom was Tom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden you can get these #1 shows, and including when Michael Basin was booming and all these, you can get these #1 shows that are coming on. Of course, they didn't all have morning shows at then, and not pay what you're paying Tom. And I know,
I mean, even if you look at like local radio, and even though Tom was even less expensive than a local morning show at the time that I was local. So, I mean, we were $1 million easily, like in salary. Right. And that's not including the host. That's just like, you know, the rest of us. So there were 3 of us. So we were probably then 2 million, because the host probably made $1 million. So if you look at that cost and splitting it 122 ways, then obviously it just makes more sense to have a Tom than to have a local show, because syndicated just saves you so much money, you know, for a top rated show. Obviously you lose in the personalization and the localization and whatever. But that's why it was still called the Fly Jack, because we went to so many cities just so we could be there in the city. But syndication ruined, and I will say this, I love syndication, but syndication ruined radio. It ruined real personality radio, because you had to conform to 122 cities. And that's why like a lot of shows like New York was very slow to do syndicated, because it's such a personality driven city. And if you're not from New York, like Tom didn't really do well in New York. If you're not from New York, people don't
know the vibe
hear what you have to say. Quite
and the vibe change in a city like New York. The vibe changes every day, every night.
Yeah.
They had the radio stations. That's why I love Spike Lee. They would have the radio station. They still have it. Some of the DJs, the DJ online, you'll see some of the guys that DJ in house music, whatever. They'll be on in the little studio with the glass window on the street. They like people can walk by on the street and see you DJ. Hey, what's going on? Such and such.
Yeah,
it was that much community.
It's totally personality driven. And when Tom went back into the market, because he went back into the market probably, I don't know, 3 years before I left, maybe. I mean, he moved to New York. Like, we all went to New York for a while. He bought a place in Harlem, and I mean, he hung out there quite a bit, because that was the only way that they would say yes, is that if he had a real presence in New York. But they were really slow to do it. I mean, cities like LA and some of those other really, specific cities were really slow to syndication, because they knew that they weren't going to get that local feel out of the shows.
Yeah. So you stopped doing the Tom Joyner Show. It was that 2000?
I don't know. It was like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
That wasn't long ago. Yeah. So, but you enter a time where you got a chance to see every transition in media. Yeah. So now with what's going on now, and I know you teach people on it and how to have your media presence, how to still put out press releases and still make sure you're staying in front of people. All that stuff is about staying in front of people in a dynamic way. What's the biggest thing that you like the most about how media is now, how it's being done?
You can do it on your own terms. Anybody can do it. It's like you can decide today you want to start a radio show, and you can start a radio show. And I think it's great for people to really get a chance to hone their skills, figure out who they are as a personality. Like if that's their goal to work in traditional, you really get a chance to develop your own following, because unfortunately, I mean, social media and other online outlets are such a competition now for traditional radio and television stations that they really want you to bring your audience with you. Right. So, that's why there's so many celebrities now that have radio shows and comedians, because they already have a following. Right. We are really competing, with the online thing. And it took a while to realize, okay, so we can work together. We can merge our platforms, work together, and all grow. And that was another reason that they brought me to Tom, because Tom had no social media presence when I started. I started Tom's social media. And the reason that we did it was because literally Tom's audience was dying. I mean, he's been in radio longer than I've been alive. So his audience literally was dying. And we had to figure out a way that we could develop a new audience that may not necessarily be into the music or whatever, but we could provide them with information that they could use online, blackamericaweb.com, and in social media. And so that was one of my, I guess, unique value propositions, was that I understood social media. So I started in social media.
So right now, what's the biggest thing? What excites you the most about what you're doing right now? Some of the things you're doing right now.
That I'm the only person that tells me what to do. I think that's the biggest thing. I think just the freedom. I mean, I think that no matter what position you have, I mean, you could be the top-notch CEO with the corner office, but usually you're working for somebody else, and they still have control over your money. They have control over your time. They have control over your focus. And I loved what I did. It was such a hard decision to leave, because I absolutely loved what I did. I mean, it's more a part of who I am than a job or what I did or a career. Right. So that was extremely difficult. But I had 2 kids that didn't always remember who I was, because I was gone so much.
Come to the house and Oh, mom.
Yeah, you're the one that gave birth to us. And you know, it's funny because, you know, like I'd never taken them to school their first day, never been on a field trip. I mean, I was the mom at the baseball games with the laptop because, you know, Tom would need something, you know, so it was just always this ongoing thing. And I just decided that I needed to do something different, and that my family and friends and me and my kids needed to be the priority, because they weren't, you know, while I was working. And I say that, you know, transparently and, you know, regretfully, but it was just the reality of it.
Right.
Now they don't really know that they were missing out on like having a mom at home that bakes cookies all the time like that. That wasn't their reality, but I knew it because that's what I had. But like I said, I mean, they had so many different experiences that most kids don't have. They were placed in positions and around people, you know, that most people don't get to meet. The funniest thing, my son went with me, my oldest son went with me to produce Al Sharpton's show at the Tom Joyner family reunion, because we were still doing our shows live. So I produced a show with him. It was him, Don Lemon, Michael Baisden, and somebody else. And so my son was talking to me. He got to meet Malcolm X's daughter, like all of this stuff. And we were leaving, and it just dawned on me, like, I bet he doesn't know what Al Sharpton looked like before Al Sharpton lost all the weight. So
you show him an old picture.
And his eyes were like this for like 10 minutes. Like he could not believe that was it. So they've had experiences and met people and hung out with people that they normally wouldn't have hung out with. And now that I'm reflecting, and now that my kids are older, and like my oldest son is at college, and we might not ever see him again because he's so used to being independent that he's just doing brilliantly. I mean, they have a real sense of independence and ownership, and, you know, they're just all about getting it done. And I don't think they would have had that if I was around, holding their hand the whole time they were growing up. So it works out the way it's supposed to work out. But there are some things that I regret.
Yeah, that's the heavy toss up. I talk to mothers, fathers too. It's a bit different. I don't think
there's no father's guilt. Not in,
yeah, you know what I'm saying. That's what I was about to say.
There's father's guilt for other things, but not in this regard.
Right.
Like, you know, like Tom, you know, I mean, they just never had to worry about it because there was always like a wife at home. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's not that big of a deal. And I think that when you're in like these high powered positions, you naturally want to work above and beyond so that you prove your worth, which is just this is wrong. So it's just not the same thing. And I was a single mom for most of my kids, you know, growing up. And so
that's another thing. So was it they spent more time with their dad? No,
their dad was not in the picture. So, I mean, we like I said, they're really independent. I mean, they for most when they got older, like I had a nanny when we first got here because they were young. Right. But then I was like, I stayed home one day and the nanny still came so I could sleep in, and that nanny wasn't doing anything. Like they were getting up, they got their breakfast, they got dressed. I was like, okay, the nanny.
You're looking at the nanny's reading the magazine.
Yeah, you want to take that bill off, and they really they've never been late for a day at school. They never missed school because they overslept. I mean, they've always just had to be really responsible, and they've lived up to that and more. But there were real sacrifices that we had to make. I never took them to school in the morning because I was at work. So like for 2 years, they took Uber to school.
All right, because for the morning show, what time you getting there? Like 4 or 5?
Tom called at 3:30 to start the conversation, and then I was usually in the studio by 4:35. Mm-hmm.
So now
20 years of that, because I've only done mornings. My entire radio career has only been mornings.
Are you a morning person?
Well, I have to be.
I
probably was a morning person anyway, but I mean, it's a certain skill that you have to learn to get up and actually have a pleasant conversation with somebody at 4:30 in the morning.
Especially when they call and ring your phone, you got to be able to have that hello voice like you were already up. That's the hard one. You can't.
You never wanted to be asleep when Tom called.
Hey, Nikki. Hey, Tom.
That's funny.
Did I wake you? No, come on now.
I mean, we used to have a rule, like you couldn't come in the studio with an attitude because it's so hard to be there so early. Like we didn't want any negative energy. Like you have to leave all of that at the door. We don't want problems. We don't want any of that.
I'm glad I'm not. See, I didn't know that was the thing. I'm glad I'm big. Anytime I have a studio act and I'm about to, God willing, when all this You know,
Mm-hmm.
anytime I have my radio studio, my podcast, whatever, I have an orange wall, and I'm big on bright colors, and I'm big on coffee smell when you come in, and I'm big on, I was that person in any business I did. So, but I'm a morning person. I would be considered a morning person, but I like the, I like the best part of waking up, commercial, look, open the window, turning the radio on. I'm that person anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I transitioned to doing a morning show, it just, in my head, I've just remembered, you remember those things to think about you don't think about it maybe as much because you're in the business side of it, but on the nostalgia side of it, there aren't too many people who came up wanting to do radio that didn't wake up with the music playing in the radio being a part of your wake up commercial. Like if something's happening in your dream, you wake up and you're like, I heard rap with you in my dream. Oh, it was already playing. So it's that kind of thing, that kind of energy. So how do you transition from those kind of experiences? How do you transition those kind of experiences into, and I'm talking about even pre-COVID now, where you don't necessarily, were you going into an office at all or just home office before?
But I was traveling so much. That was like, because like I traveled every week. Like I was gone at least 3 days out of the week. And about 6 months before COVID, I got a client in London. So I was in London once a month. So yeah, the traveling didn't slow down at all. But I did work from home when I was actually home. Yes. But I didn't have two kids running around, that just changes everything.
Right. Back home. And they're like, everything's so small in here. No, y'all too big.
Man. And it's like, it would be fun because like, like they would make lunch in the kitchen. I'd be like on a Zoom call and I'd be like, you don't see I'm in a meeting. And they're like, well, they don't know you have kids and that it's lunchtime and we're hungry. And I'm like, okay, look.
Yeah, but they expect to see you walk out in a
right. Walking around making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So it definitely was a change. Just being home so much. But it was good because I really got to focus on things that just hadn't been done, so I really got to look at different parts of my business and things I wanted to do differently. And I got to take some trainings, that I really didn't feel as confident in certain areas in business. So it's been really good for me. I mean, it hasn't hurt business for me at all. I mean, I think I pivoted really quickly and figured out that we'd have to do some things differently. And, some clients, they had to go take care of whatever they had to take care of, but then I got new clients. So I think for me, the biggest shift between working for somebody else and working for myself, and I would say that first 6 months was rough because it's a whole different thing, when it's you, it's 100% you. And, because one of the things I was determined not to do was like to touch my 401k or my savings or anything like that. So, you're like, well, how are we going to keep these bills rolling in? Because my kids was like, we don't want our lifestyle to change. I was like, okay.
Especially when they're old enough to tell you, like, are we going to lose something, Mom?
Yeah, like, are we not going to are we not going to be able to go on vacation? Like, what's going to happen? Like, so we had to keep that coming in. So it's rough because like the first time a client says, I might not be able to pay you this month, like you go into panic mode. So, I mean, the thing for me that I think was most important and that I continue to work on, and I think what really helped me during this period was I had done so much work on my mindset and the way that I see things that, losing a client doesn't send me into a panic, just like COVID didn't send me into a panic. And I think sometimes people just get so stuck in that fear that they can't see all the opportunities around them. So I was talking to a lady.
No, I want you to finish.
Well, this was just a perfect example. I was talking to a lady and she has an organic skincare business. And she was like, when COVID hit, shipping slowed down, all of this stuff slowed down. She's like, I had 600 pounds of aloe. And so she's like, I made hand sanitizer and we sold out. We couldn't keep it. And so that was like a perfect example of like, okay, not looking at like what you can't do, but what can you do with what you have and what do people really need? And Lord knows we needed hand sanitizer. Like if I could make toilet paper, I would have. It's like you got to figure out what people need and then, and provide it for them.
So I want to touch on that. I wasn't going to touch on it, but you mentioned it. What things or what tools did you use to help change your mindset? Like what methodologies outside of prayer, meditation, what other things help you change your mindset to be more proactive? Because that's something as an entrepreneur you have to do like hourly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I think one of the big things for me was like looking at other really successful entrepreneurs, and really building a support system of people that you can call. Like if something really goes bad, like you can just brainstorm. Like we did that in the beginning of COVID. There were like 6 of us, and we would do weekly calls. Like, okay, what's going on? How can we help you? Like, how can we support? Like that kind of thing. But I also think that, we have this internal conversation that just goes constantly. And we don't really monitor it. So we just have all of these like really bad thoughts. Like, if this client doesn't pay, am I going to lose my house? Or, what if I can't pay my car? Just like all of these negative things. Yeah. And yeah. And it's just, and that, if that's, I swear, if that is where your focus is, it sounds so simple. And I guess it's a law of attraction, but if that's where your focus is, that's what like really grows. Cause that's what you're living in. But if you focus on, the fact, okay, I mean, I may not be able to pay my mortgage, but, we've got a big van and we can move stuff. I mean, I don't know, but you have to change how you think about things, and you have to change how you think about you. Because I think that when, for me, it's like, I never really had a confidence issue, but I never really had to rely solely on me and my talents to feed my children. Right. I mean, obviously I was good at what I did, but, if I didn't, if I had a bad day, nothing bad was going to happen to my paycheck. You know what I mean? So, so changing the way you think about yourself and how you operate, like in the universe, I think is really important. Somebody said something to me the other day, and I was like, I will always be taken care of. And they thought it was like I met by a man. And I was like, no, I was like, the way that I operate, I don't ever have a fear of not being able to have a good life, not being able to, do the things that I need to do and really be happy and, the things that I enjoy. I just don't have that fear. And so it's never materialized for me. But it could have gone very badly in that first 6 months if I hadn't gotten it together, to be quite honest. So I think the most important thing I can do as an entrepreneur, and even just as a person and as a mother, is just continue to work on my mindset. Just to continue work on my mindset.
Just a couple things before I let you go. So let's talk about the, well, first I want to talk about your ideal, we talked about it before. I don't know if you take on any more quote unquote clients because of the workload you have with them, but when you transition, but you have your media background, your production background, you know how to help people. Like I like to say, stay in front of people in a dynamic way and getting their message out and their message across. What are your ideal actual clients that hire you? Not the coaching side. I'm just talking about like client, like you said, you had a client in London. When did you realize, okay, these are the good type of clients? Was it, just being honest, was it really, okay, they're paying me this much, I'll work with them? Or was it something?
Well, I think it was certainly that in the beginning, because I don't think that you ever think that you have to have an ideal client other than the fact that they can pay you. Right. But for me, it's become really important that they kind of have the same kind of servant heart that I have, because I get so invested in people, even if they're a client. Like that, I'm never going to say like, okay, well, my 40 hours is up. Like that's just never been a part of my reality, and it's not the way I work now. So I want to be able to invest in people that I know are going to invest in people, if that makes sense. Right. So that's important. It's important that I really like who I work with, which is why I don't have the London contract anymore, because they were horrible people. Right. So it's really important that I like who I work with, and that they really have something that's going to impact the world, whatever that may be, and that they're coachable, because most people don't understand what it takes to really get media. So you want somebody that's going to do what you tell them to do, because they know that you have their best interest at heart. So those are probably the three big things. And I mean, one of the things that, I affirm every day is that I only ideal clients come my way. So it's like, I don't even have to really weed anybody out. I mean, I swear, it's like I have 5 clients and they're like now my best friends, and some I still work with and some I don't, but we're still really good friends because it was just such a valuable relationship because of what I poured in and what they poured in. So if that makes sense. So, I mean, money is great, but if your living experience is not, then what does it even really matter?
Right. And so for the people you are coaching and how you're helping people now with people that are doing podcasts, doing shows like this. We'll talk more. We gotta catch up. Shows like this that on one end, the podcast, the market is saturated, but there's always room for content. On the other end, shows like this have because of what's happened and because of the lack of production in the industry now, this is a very valuable commodity. So in the coaching realm, how are you getting people to prepare or to start packaging? Because I know a lot of times you're telling people how to get to the bigger media channels before, like I say, it was press release and things like that. But
I
now,
don't necessarily try to coach people to get to the bigger media outlets. That's what they would like me to coach them on.
Oh,
but I coach them to get to the right media outlets, because depending on what you're trying to do, like CNN may not be a good fit for you. You may get seen by 1 million people, but are 1 million people going to become your client? And if they're not, then why are we doing it? So
right.
You come to me and you say, I just want to be in front of as many people as possible, then okay, that's one thing. But if you're coming to me because you have a business that you're trying to grow, then we need to find the audiences that are made up of your ideal clients. And so podcasts and shows like this are perfect because most of them are so niche down that you can find your ideal client just in one podcast. So right. I mean, I was doing some research. There was a podcast, and it was a highly rated podcast on people that just buy RVs and tour around the world or tour around the country. I mean, it's a podcast.
RV life.
So if you're selling RVs, you want to be on that podcast. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like
right.
you can really find your ideal client, in a podcast audience, and it's just full of them. So it's really and maybe it's local. If you're doing an event, you want people can actually get to your event. So, CNN may not work as well as doing a local radio interview. So it's the right media that I try to get people. And then making sure that they're prepared, because not everybody is prepared for an interview, believe it or not. And certainly not prepared for like a CNN interview. So then making sure that they're properly prepared, that they can then leverage that opportunity for it to make sense and make revenue. Because a lot of people
we've seen it. I can't. One of the, of course, for those, I don't usually date these, but for those that are watching now, we're in the middle of pandemic election season 2020. Right. A phenomenal. It will be a historic year. You'll see this later on, years from now, and be like, man, we're going through a lot. But to think about the guy who, the reporter who had the interviews with Trump and held the information until his book came out and then released it. Because in the interview, of course, a lot of our counterparts are very good at making sure they have the book. He was like, so you killed 18 people, but you found the Lord and something right. else happened? And what you talk about in your new book, I killed 18 people and found the Lord. It's like, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had the book.
But how much of a turnoff is that, though? You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's the biggest thing that I think people get wrong. Like, it's not my job as a producer to sell your book. Like, that's not our job. Our job is to provide valuable, information. Now, obviously, if you've written a book, you've got a lot of valuable information. So just share that, and then people will buy your book. Like, right. We hung up on some, well, I didn't hang up, but Tom hung up on him. Because every question that we asked ended with, if you buy the book, then you'll know. And we were like, what?
Yeah, that's bad.
It was one of the worst interviews I've ever been a part of. And I called them after that. I was like, you will not get another interview, because if you go pitch yourself to Steve Harvey and they see you've been on their show, on our show, they're going to call me and they're going to ask me, or they're going to Google it and they're going to hear it, and they're going to hear what kind of interview you did, and you will not get booked again. You will not.
What's the sister's name? I don't think she's been on, even though she had reality shows and stuff like that. I'm good friends with Mark Clark. He was in a Big Fat Morning Show in the Baltimore market before.
Mark was in St. Louis for a long time.
Right. So, but he had an interview with Keisha Coles, the singer, and she was just not in it. And this was when the Big Fat Morning Show was on, so it was a morning interview, and she was just like, one word answers, not really, Yeah, if that's what you think, just bad. And it was so bad and so obvious that at the end of the interview, Mark was like, well, I have to say, it was like, seem like you have an attitude, and we're kind of just here, interviewing you and wanting to get. We're fans. That's why you're here. So we're not here to this and that. Now, not knowing what you're going through, but as a celebrity or anybody that do anything with the public, your ass better turn it on. I don't care what's going on. You got to turn it on.
Absolutely.
At least and if you tell them ahead of time, if your people are there, you just say, hey, can we just do a half an hour? Half an hour? Okay. Then they're like, oh, okay, we just have a half an hour. We understand. It could be a scheduled thing, but turn it on. And it was so bad that when she finally left, and he was like, we're here for you and this and that. She's like, okay, well, if you say so. He's like, all right, y'all, this is Keisha Coles. Thanks so much for coming to the Big Fat Morning Show. So they were transitioning off into the next time slot with Nikki. And Nikki brought the Big Fat Morning Show on her show and said, we got to talk about that. So the next half an hour was talking about her attitude. I haven't heard a lot media-wise. You see her music, you see different things, but it's those kind of things that I guess people have to be prepared for either way. And I think with social media and some of the things now, and I'll get your opinion on this. What's the power in negativity versus positivity now? Have you seen a shift in that? Because you went through the time of reality TV when it seems like it went beyond the news thing of if it bleeds, it leads to like if blacks are humiliated, it's gonna be played. I don't even know if that rhymes, but it's like if there's fighting, we're gonna play it. If there's nudity, we're gonna show it. Or it has to be more shock, or it has to be more shock. We even seen
definitely has to be sensationalized. I mean, we've done some phenomenal interviews with people that nobody ever remembers because there was nothing shocking about it. But we did an interview. We did an interview with Columbus Short right after he got fired from Scandal. And I don't know why they agreed to do the interview, first of all. As a publicist, I would have said, absolutely not. You need to let this breathe. But not only, had he just been fired and was angry, he was drunk and he was high, and it was 6:00 in the morning. And it just went south really quickly. And I think Tom hung up on him too, because he started calling, I think he started calling Tom and Uncle Tom or something like that. And it was interesting because I was working with another show, years later, and they wanted Columbus on. So I reached out to him, and, he was like, I guess he Googled me. And so he was like, oh, you used to work for Tom. And I was like, yeah. And he just was so apologetic. And I was like, yeah, because that's all people remembered about him. It was like that Tom Joyner interview. But it's like, it's a hard line because, on one point, like Jennifer Lopez has hung up on me twice because I asked questions that they said not to ask, because I guess they thought they were too sensationalized. But if I don't ask them, then people are going to be asking me, like, why wouldn't you ask them the question when it's the question everybody has? So it's like this fine line. I mean, you want to make sure that you're getting the information that your audience cares about. And a lot of times that has to do with you acting a fool on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. But at the same time, you have to be prepared to answer those questions in a way that doesn't make you look even worse. So right. Jennifer hanging up on me, people, all they remember was that she hung up on you. And why, if she hadn't been wrong, why would she hang up on you? That's the whole chatter. So it's a fine line. But now, as I do media training, I have found that people just have so many quick triggers. And, it's like people ask a question and they just go totally left with it. I'm like, you are an actor. Act like you don't care that they ask you this question. So it's like, it's frustrating, but that's what sells. That is absolutely what sells. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Nikki Woods, I done took up.
I was going to say, my battery is dying. Like, we got to wrap this up.
So anything you want to say to folks, and how can they get in touch with you before you get out of here?
I mean, I want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate you opening up your platform to me. And I don't know. I wish I could give the world a hug. It's like we're going through such a tough time. I just want everybody to, to stay strong and support each other. And if you need help, ask for it. But you know, this is something that we're all experiencing together. Probably the first time in history that the whole world is like going through kind of the same thing. And so, you know, we should really be, you know, more supportive, I think, of each other. And you can find me anywhere on social media. It's Nikki Woods everywhere. And I love to connect on social. So definitely reach out. And
she's touchable in
a
good way.
Touchable. Yes, I am. I'm a touchable. Yeah.
So thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you. I'm gonna be talking to you soon and pulling your ear, and don't be surprised you hear a knock on your door, and I'm like,
better have your mask on.
I will.
People knock on my door without a mask. Like, what are you doing? Better have your mask on. No. I love you, and so we definitely have to catch up.
Yeah, put my bread in the plastic bag.
Yeah, well, and set it outside so you can pick it up after I close the door. It's like we're in such a weird time. It's such a weird world we're in right now.
All right. Thank you again, Nikki. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.